Arizona has logged over 1,000 UFO sightings. One single night had 10% of the entire state watching the sky at the same time, and the official government explanation made almost nobody feel better about what they saw. At number 10, we have Prescott Valley, a community sitting high in the Bradshaw Mountain region of north-central Arizona. Most people have never connected this town to UFOs. That is about to change significantly. Back in 1953, 3 residents of the broader Prescott area watched 8 disc-shaped objects move over Del Rio Springs Creek. Local newspapers documented the sighting at the time. Then the story went quiet for 40 years. Then March 13th, 1997 arrived. Prescott Valley became one of the very first Arizona communities to report something in the sky that night. Witnesses described a massive V-shaped formation of lights moving silently overhead around 8:15 p.m. A man named Tim Lay stood in his yard with his wife, his son, and his grandson. The formation appeared to move directly toward them. They tracked it for several minutes as it crossed the valley floor. Their account lined up with dozens of other witnesses spread along the same flight path that same night. Separate people, separate locations, same description. That level of consistency is not easy to write off. Prescott Valley is now recognized as the geographic starting point for understanding how the events of that night spread across Arizona. The lights did not begin over Phoenix. They began here, in the mountains to the north. That one detail reframes the entire event. What happened that night was not a local Phoenix phenomenon. It crossed hundreds of miles of desert, and the first community to see it was Prescott Valley. Coming in at number 9 is Paulden, a small community in Yavapai County, about 20 miles north of Prescott. It does not appear on most maps, but researchers who study that 1997 night know exactly where it is. At approximately 8:15 p.m. on March 13th, 1997, a former police officer in Paulden looked up and spotted a cluster of reddish-orange lights grouped in a tight formation. He watched them vanish over the southern horizon. His report was among the earliest officially logged observations of the lights as they moved southward across the state, and the fact that he was a former law enforcement officer made his account harder to dismiss. Police officers are trained to observe and document events accurately under pressure. When a man with that background files a detailed report about lights he cannot identify or explain, that report carries a different kind of weight. His description matched reports coming in from communities further south along the same corridor. Paulden first, then Prescott Valley, then communities closer to Phoenix. The formation was moving south, steady and completely silent the entire time. Researchers who have mapped the Phoenix Lights event use Paulden as a fixed anchor point in their timelines. From that location and that timestamp, they can estimate the path and speed the formation traveled that night. The silence, the speed, and the cross-county consistency of reports stretching across miles of open desert turned one strange night into a debate that the U.S. government has still not fully closed, decades later. Number 8 is Tucson, home to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, one of the most active military aviation installations anywhere in the southwestern United States. If you want the official explanation for 1997, this is where it originates. The base served as the operational center for Operation Snowbird, an Air National Guard pilot training program. The U.S. Air Force later identified this program as the direct source of the V-shaped lights seen statewide that March night. But Tucson had its own UFO history long before 1997. On May 1, 1952, Major Rudy Pestalozzi, a base intelligence officer at Davis-Monthan, watched 2 shiny disc-shaped objects catch up to a B-36 bomber mid-flight. The objects reportedly matched the bomber's speed for several seconds before peeling away at a sharp angle. Major Pestalozzi filed a full report with Project Blue Book, the official Air Force UFO investigation program, running from 1952 to Tucson sits at the crossroads of heavy military flight corridors and some of the clearest desert skies in the country. That combination has kept it among the most consistently active UFO reporting cities in Arizona for over 70 years. The military presence cuts both ways. It gives investigators a ready explanation for many sightings, but it also raises a harder question. What happens when the thing observed does not match anything the base officially has in the air? Number 7 is Sedona. And if you have been to Arizona, you already know the red rocks and the spiritual reputation. What you might not know is that Sedona also carries decades of serious UFO report history. The combination of dark skies, remote canyon country, minimal light pollution, and an already established community of people drawn to unexplained phenomena made Sedona a natural gathering point for UFO reports going back several decades. Reports from the area over the years describe glowing orbs, darting lights, and aerial objects moving in patterns that do not match known aircraft behavior. Some of these reports come from people with no prior interest in UFOs. The nearby Bradshaw Ranch became a focal point for local UFO lore after its former owners reported recurring strange activity on the property. The land was later acquired by a federal agency. That acquisition raised its own questions. The property is currently used for long-term climate research by Northern Arizona University under a U.S. Forest Service permit. In 2023, a History Channel production crew visited the site and reported detecting unusual readings while on location there. Sedona also supports a full commercial UFO tour industry. Multiple operators run nightly excursions using military-grade night vision equipment. Many of the lights spotted on those tours turn out to be satellites, aircraft, or known atmospheric effects, but not all of them. The volume of unresolved reports filed from the Sedona area over the years has kept the region a consistent subject of UFO research, regardless of how many sightings eventually get explained away. Number 6 is Scottsdale, located just east of Phoenix in the greater metropolitan area. And this entry comes with a twist. The most important first-hand account connected to Scottsdale and the Phoenix Lights actually supports the military explanation. On the night of March 13, 1997, a 21-year-old amateur astronomer named Mitch Stanley was in his Scottsdale backyard using a 10-inch Dobo neon reflecting telescope when the V-shaped formation of lights passed overhead. Stanley reported that through his telescope, he could clearly make out the lights as belonging to a formation of aircraft. He described seeing multiple fixed-wing planes flying in a tight V formation, consistent with military flight behavior. His account was reported to the Phoenix New-Times in 1997 and became one of the most frequently cited pieces of evidence supporting the Air Force position that the first round of lights was produced by A-10 Thunderbolt jets. Think about what that means. The same lights, the same sky, the same night. Hundreds of people watched with their bare eyes and saw something they could not explain. One person used a telescope and saw aircraft. The interpretation of an event can change completely depending on what tools the observer has access to. Stanley's account does not prove everyone else was wrong. It shows how dramatically equipment changes what people are actually able to see. Scottsdale sits at the center of one of the most interesting fault lines in the entire Phoenix Lights story. The same event, the same moment in the sky, generating completely opposite conclusions from equally credible people on the ground. Number 5 takes us to Snowflake and Heber Overgaard, small communities sitting on the Mogollon Rim in eastern Arizona's Navajo County. What happened here on November 5, 1975 became one of the most debated cases in American UFO history. A logging crew of 7 men was working in the Apache-Sitgreaves National Forests that evening when they reported encountering a bright glowing object hovering in a clearing in the forest ahead of their truck. One crew member, a 22-year-old named Travis Walton, got out of the truck to approach the object. A beam of light struck him. The 6 remaining crew members, believing he had been killed, left the scene in a panic. When they returned, Walton was gone. A large-scale search operation spanning several days followed. Law enforcement was involved. The case was treated as a missing persons investigation. No trace of Travis Walton was found anywhere in the forest. 5 days later, on November 10th, Walton resurfaced. He called from a payphone in nearby Heber, in a disoriented state. He later claimed he had been held aboard a craft by beings he was unable to identify. All 6 crew members, who witnessed the initial encounter, were subjected to polygraph examinations during the missing persons investigation. The results indicated that the men believed they had genuinely witnessed something highly unusual that night in the forest. Skeptics, including science writers Philip Klass and Michael Shermer, have argued the entire event was a fabrication, pointing to inconsistencies in the account and possible financial motivations tied to book and film rights that followed years later. Walton's account was published in a 1978 book and adapted into the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. He has maintained the same core account consistently for 50 years. The case has never been officially resolved either way. Number 4 is Kingman, a city in Mohave County in northwestern Arizona, along historic Route 66. Most people know Kingman as a gas stop on the way to Las Vegas. UFO researchers know it as something else entirely. On May 21, 1953, a mechanical engineer named Arthur Stansell, who worked at the Nevada test site on nuclear testing operations, was reportedly transported by the U.S. Air Force to a remote desert location near Kingman. Stansell stated under a signed affidavit that he was brought there to help examine a crashed object of unknown origin. He initially published his account under the pseudonym Fritz Werner to protect his identity when the story first became public. He described an oval metallic craft roughly 30 feet across that had impacted the desert floor without visible structural damage. Members of the recovery team were reportedly not permitted to communicate with one another during the entire assignment. Subsequent local research by historian Harry Drew reportedly identified a site 8 miles southeast of Kingman, where evidence of a historical military encampment was found. including food containers consistent with a 1953 date. That detail has not been widely covered. The Mojave Museum of History and Arts in Kingman maintains a section dedicated to the incident. And in 2024, partially redacted government communications made public specifically reference the Kingman event by name. That reference has never been explained. Number 3 is the White Mountains region, specifically the Apache Sitgreaves National Forests, stretching across east-central Arizona. The Travis Walton case already touched this ground, but the region has its own UFO history, running deeper than that 1975 incident. The White Mountains area, with its high elevation, dark skies, and sparse population, has generated a significant volume of reports, filed with organizations like MUFON and the National UFO Reporting Center, across multiple decades. The region's remoteness makes it a difficult place to investigate. Dense national forest, limited road access, and minimal population all mean that unusual events in this area are far more likely to go unwitnessed and unreported than elsewhere. The forest system spans roughly 2 million acres across Navajo and Apache counties. Arizona's New Fork data shows that counties in this region report sightings at rates above the state average when the numbers are adjusted for population. That last point deserves a second look. Fewer people live there, yet the adjusted sighting rate is still higher than average, which means the raw count actually understates how frequently people in that region are reporting something unusual. The White Mountains are consistently cited alongside Sedona as one of Arizona's 2 primary UFO-associated regions. Both share the same core combination of dark skies, geographic remoteness, and a long-documented record that predates modern UFO tourism entirely. Number 2 is Maricopa County, which includes Phoenix, Mesa, Glendale, Scottsdale, Tempe, and dozens of other communities across the greater Phoenix metro area. By total volume of reported sightings, this is the most active UFO location in Arizona. According to National UFO Reporting Center data covering 2000 through 2023, Maricopa County recorded approximately 56 UFO sightings per 100,000 residents. The national average over the same period was 34.3 per 100,000. That is not a small gap. In 2019 alone, more than 200 UFO sightings were reported across Arizona, with a large portion concentrated in the Phoenix Valley. Disks, triangles, spheres, and unidentified lights all appear repeatedly in the county's filed reports over the years. Many of these reports have straightforward explanations. Luke Air Force Base generates heavy military flight traffic overhead. Weather balloons, drones, satellites, and atmospheric optical effects are all known to produce unusual visual phenomena across this region regularly. But a portion of the reports filed with UNFORC, even after filtering out obvious misidentifications, stays unresolved. The county has both the population density to produce more observers and the military air traffic to generate more unexplained encounters. No other county in Arizona combines those two factors at the same scale. More people watching the sky plus more unusual things moving through it equals more reports that investigators cannot cleanly close. That math keeps repeating year after year. And that brings us to number 1, the Phoenix Lights. No UFO event in Arizona history, and arguably in American history, comes close to matching the scale, documentation, or public reach of what happened on March 13, 1997. That night, lights in 2 distinct formations were observed across a corridor stretching approximately 300 miles, from the Nevada state line through Prescott, across Phoenix, and toward the edge of Tucson. The window ran from 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. A Rocky Mountain poll taken shortly after the event estimated that as many as 10% of all Arizonans may have seen something in the sky that night. Over 1,000 witnesses came forward publicly, on record, with their names attached. Among them was former Arizona Governor Fife Symington III. He initially staged a press conference mocking the event by having a staffer appear in an alien costume. Years later, he publicly stated he had seen the formation himself that night. The event actually consisted of 2 completely separate incidents. The first was a V-shaped formation of 6 to 10 lights that traveled silently across the entire state. The Air Force attributed it to A-10 Thunderbolt jets flying as part of Operation Snowbird. The second incident occurred around 10 p.m. and produced the most widely circulated photographs and video footage from that night. Military officials attributed it to illumination flares dropped by a separate flight of A-10 jets during training exercises. Those flares were equipped with parachutes. They descended slowly and appeared to hover in place before disappearing behind the Sierra Estrella mountain range southwest of Phoenix. Many witnesses had no idea a mountain range was blocking their line of sight. Mitch Stanley's telescope account supports the military explanation for the first formation. The Paulden officer's timestamp supports the geographic tracking. Dave Ismondan's training records provide operational context. The Air Force position has documented evidence behind it. And yet, over 1,000 people watched something cross 300 miles of Arizona sky in near total silence, and walked away with an experience they have described as genuinely unlike anything they had ever seen before or since. The Air Force closed the case. The witnesses never did. 29 years later, the Phoenix Lights remains the most documented mass UFO event in American history, and the gap between the official explanation and what people saw has never fully closed.